On November 1, 1755, a devastating event changed not only the destiny of Portugal but also influenced world history in a way that few natural disasters have. What began as a simple tremor of the earth turned into a catastrophe of epic proportions, challenging the beliefs of the time and questioning the relationship between science, religion, and the very meaning of life. Have you ever imagined what would happen if, suddenly, everything you know were destroyed in a matter of minutes? Let's travel back in time and understand how the Lisbon earthquake reshaped history and the worldview of millions of people. On an otherwise ordinary day, while the Portuguese were preparing to celebrate All Saints' Day, Lisbon was struck by one of the largest earthquakes in history. The tremor, followed by devastating tsunamis and uncontrollable fires, left the city in ruins. More than just a natural disaster, the 1755 earthquake provoked a social, political, religious, and even philosophical crisis, forcing humanity to question its beliefs and its very existence. How can such a monumental event change the course of history? How did it affect Europe and the world in a period marked by intense religiosity and a growing philosophical transformation? Let's explore all of this. The 18th century was a time of great change. Europe was transitioning between the modern age and the contemporary age, and Portugal, one of the most powerful empires of the time, was at the peak of its glory. The Portuguese economy was driven by colonial exploration and maritime trade, with riches from Africa, South America, and Asia arriving at the ports of Lisbon. But behind this prosperity, there was a deep division between social classes and intense religiosity permeating every aspect of daily life. The capital, Lisbon, was a vibrant city rich in art, culture, and history, but also marked by inequality. Lisbon was a city of grand palaces and ornate churches that contrasted with the poorer neighborhoods. Catholicism dominated the lives of the Lisbon population, and churches, monasteries, and convents were not only centers of faith but also of political and economic power. However, this religious and economic structure was challenged when the ground shook, and the city was devastated. The 1755 earthquake was not just a simple geological event. It was a landmark in the history of science and philosophy. When the earth trembled in Lisbon, it wasn't just buildings that collapsed, but also the belief system that upheld Portuguese society. The population, which had been preparing for a religious celebration, found itself in the midst of chaos. Churches collapsed with worshippers inside, and fear spread across the city. The giant waves that hit the Lisbon coast and the fires, which lasted for days, worsened the tragedy. The impact was enormous, not only in terms of lives lost and material destruction but also in the fields of philosophy and religion. Many saw the earthquake as divine punishment, a sign that humanity's sin was not unnoticed by God. But this interpretation was challenged by thinkers like Voltaire and Kant, who began questioning the idea that natural disasters were God's punishment. Kant, for example, argued that the earthquake was the result of mechanical and geographical causes, not a divine act. The Lisbon earthquake was an event that divided society and sparked reflections on the relationship between man and the divine. While many continued to view the disaster as a manifestation of God, others began to adopt a more scientific view, seeking explanations in natural laws. This clash between science and religion intensified and paved the way for the development of Enlightenment thought. On the other hand, the tragedy also had a profound political impact. The Marquis of Pombal, responsible for the reconstruction of Lisbon, implemented reforms that transformed the city and the country itself. His actions were not limited to the physical rebuilding of Lisbon, but also to the social and economic reorganization of the Portuguese Empire. The earthquake not only destroyed the city of Lisbon, but also shook the foundations of Portuguese society. Thousands of dead, countless injured, and a city in ruins. But the consequences went beyond material loss. The psychological trauma caused by the tragedy led many people to question their faith and their place in the world. The religious crisis triggered by the earthquake fueled the Enlightenment movement, which sought rational answers to natural and social phenomena. Additionally, the economic impact was profound. Portugal depended on the wealth from its colonies, and the destruction of Lisbon directly affected trade routes. Brazil, as a Portuguese colony, also felt the repercussions of the catastrophe, being pressured to send even more wealth to Portugal to assist with the reconstruction. The Lisbon earthquake was not just an isolated event in history. It marked a deep shift in how people began to understand the world around them. In our everyday lives, we often face moments of crisis and uncertainty that make us question our faith, our values, and even our existence. What can we learn from the past, and how can we apply those lessons in our lives? How do we face adversity, and how do we overcome it? The reconstruction of Lisbon was an example of resilience and innovation. The city was rebuilt with new safety standards, considering the possibility of future natural disasters. The Marquis of Pombal introduced the concept of pombaline cages, a type of construction that was more resistant to earthquakes. But beyond the physical reconstruction, it was also necessary to rebuild the population's trust in institutions and authorities. Today, the lessons from the Lisbon earthquake continue to teach us the importance of preparation for natural disasters and the need for a more rational and scientific approach to dealing with unpredictable events. The Lisbon earthquake was more than a natural disaster. It was a turning point in the history of science, philosophy, and society. Over the centuries, the 1755 tragedy has shown us that when the unexpected happens, how we react can change the course of our lives. Sometimes, the greatest disasters force us to rethink what we know, question our beliefs, and seek new ways of understanding. What would you do if such a disaster happened today? What would be your first reactions? Did you enjoy learning more about this impactful historical event? Leave a like, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more content that dives into history and knowledge. And of course, we'd love to hear your opinion. How do you think philosophy and science evolved after the Lisbon earthquake? Comment below and join this historical conversation.